Hi everyone, welcome to Ask Tom Database Security for July 2020. Our topic this month is data redaction. Data redaction is part of advanced security. It's a feature that we first introduced when we released 12.1, and it's one of those rare features that was so popular that we backported it to 11.204. So if you're on 11.204 and you've applied a patch set with any time within the past 3 or 5 years, or up, then you have redaction available to you with your advanced security license. It is probably one of the less understood security features in the database, and we've had a lot of questions over the years about when should I use redaction, when should I use data masking, what are the capabilities of redaction. And I'm really happy to be joined today by Hakeem Lumi. Hakeem is our product manager for Europe, Middle East, and Asia. He's responsible for global field enablement here at Oracle, and he is one of the leading experts at Oracle in data masking and data redaction. So he's put together a very good walkthrough of data redaction. By the time we get done, you'll have a good feel for what you can do with it, and probably almost as important, what you shouldn't try to do with it. Just a reminder that we do it's sometimes talk about future software. In fact, one of the things we'll be talking about is a product that is being released here in the next few hours or so with any luck. But until it's actually in your hands, it's not really there. Don't make buying decisions based on that. We record these calls. The recordings will be available on the Ask Tom pages, usually a couple of days after we hold the session. And we do these calls just to give you another channel into product management besides SRs and email, which some of you have. This is just a way that we can kind of put out a technical topic each month to keep you updated on database security. Before we get into the star of today's show, I just want to run you through a few product announcements. One of those is around DataSafe. It's been a busy month for DataSafe. We've added a couple of new things in there. One of the things that we've done is if you're using Autonomous Database, we've made the process of registering DataSafe a lot easier. Prior to about a week and a half ago, when you registered an Autonomous Database, the very next step you had to do was go in, and there was a user DS$admin that's created upon registration. You had to grant a bunch of roles to that user. We have now done that for you automatically as part of registration. The only role we don't grant is the data masking role, because the data masking role has the privileges to destroy data, replace real data with fake data. So if you want to use DataSafe for data masking, you do have to manually grant that role. But other than that, as soon as you register, you're ready to begin doing your security assessments and user assessments and setting up your audit trails and the things that most people use DataSafe for. We've also expanded the databases you can use DataSafe with. We added support this week for Autonomous Database on dedicated Exadata infrastructure. This is using private endpoint. You may remember we talked about that a couple of months ago, sorry. But you are now able to work with Autonomous Database both on the shared infrastructure and on the dedicated infrastructure. I've got the link to the documentation for that on screen if you're interested in seeing it. Also with DataSafe, we have simplified sensitive data discovery. If you've run sensitive data discovery, you've probably seen that we'll discover most of the sensitive data columns within your database, but there's always a few that you may know that are sensitive that for some reason our pattern search misses. If that happened before this update, you had to go in and click the Add button. You'll see I've got an arrow to it. You'd click the Add button, and then you would scroll through a list of columns to try and find the one you wanted. The trouble is, the way we had implemented that, you literally had to scroll through the list of every column in the database. It could be tens of thousands of columns. That wasn't very practical for anything other than very small demonstrations. So what we've done now is we've given you a search capability where you can say, okay, I want to look for columns in the employee search dev schema, or you can say, I want to look based upon schema and table, and then you just see the columns for that table. Or you can even say, I know I want this column, or sorry, this schema, this table, this column, and it'll take you exactly to the column. So it makes working with modern, realistic size schemas a whole lot easier than having a drop-down list of every column in the database. That's it for data safe. For transparent data encryption, Peter Wall, who many of you have worked with before, he's our product manager for transparent data encryption, has started up a new program that he's calling the Transparent Data Encryption Academy. And what he's doing is he's producing a series of training videos on common TDE tasks. Right now, he's focusing on upgrades, since this is a time when so many people are upgrading to 19C, that being our long-term release. But you'll see there are 3 URLs here. These are all on YouTube. The URLs are LinkedIn URLs, but the videos are all on YouTube. And you've got how to upgrade an 18C PDB to 19C, a 12201, and a 12102, which covers a lot of the things that we're seeing challenged within the field. Also very happy to announce that Audit Vault and Database Firewall 20 should be released this week. The documentation is live now. Those of you who joined right at the top of the hour will see in your chat the link to that documentation, but if you want to get there, it's just docs.oracle.com. Go to database, look for related products, and you'll find the Audit Vault and Database Firewall documentation. There is a lot of new stuff in this version. We've added support for Postgres. We've expanded our custom collectors to include REST and JSON. So before we had JDBC to a table and XML, now we have REST and JSON. We've really simplified rack support to better work with things like scan listeners. It used to be quite painful to set up. Now you think you'll find it's very easy. We've completely rewritten how we do the redo log collection, the before and after value collection that used to rely on Oracle Streams. We've moved to Golden Gate. And before somebody asks the question, which I know someone will, no, you don't have to go out and buy a separate license for Golden Gate. We include the Golden Gate license with your Audit Vault and Firewall purchase. We rewrote the user interface. It's a simpler layout. We actually hired a UI expert to come in and look at how common workflows went and how tasks went. And they put the same things on the same screen or very close to each other in terms of tabs. We added in support for Active Directory integration for Audit Vault console users, or plain LDAP if you're not using Active Directory. We've worked to automate the archiving of data as it starts to age out of the system. We've done some back-end support like NIC bonding support and the multipath fiber channel. We were supporting single path fiber channel before. A whole lot more. Take a look at the What's New section of the Audit Administrator's Guide for more details. But really happy to get this out the door. Last thing before I turn it over to the star of the show, today's topic is data redaction. There's a couple of MOS notes that you may want to be aware of. The first 2 that I have listed here, these are walkthroughs similar to some of the easier things that Hakeem is going to show us today, but you'll have code samples that you can select from and try and play within your own system. The third one is my favorite. Whenever I have a problem with something like data redaction, I want to know how to troubleshoot it. This third note, 2108096.1, this tells me how to turn on tracing either at the system level or session level. Hopefully you'll never need it because you're going to pay attention to Hakeem and your policies will work perfectly every time. But just in case, it's always good to have that in your hip pocket. And with that, Hakeem, I'm going to turn it over to you. And please take us through data redaction.
Thank you, Russ. So before starting, it's important to understand what kind of existing pain our customers will encounter. So the first one is due to the confusion between the data masking definition. What is the data masking definition in the mind in general? Almost of the people will think data masking is only to mask definitely the data. But in reality, you have 2 concepts. The first one is effectively the static data masking. So it means you will modify definitively your data. And you have also the dynamic data masking. And for sure, static data masking is absolutely not appropriate for the production environment. If you consider that, imagine if you modify your production values, you will lose definitely the consistent of your sensitive data. So that's why this is the main problem. I think the first and the main problem of this concern. You have also the consideration regarding the regulations, because more and more regulation all around the world required to mask sensitive data when they will be displayed on the client application. So you have to consider that. And another point, maybe also important, is due to the misunderstanding when you talk about encryption and when you talk about masking. For few customers, I hope you are not one of them, when we talk about encryption, they think about masking. It's two concepts completely different. Encryption, it's not a masking, and masking is not encryption. So here you have to take care about all the challenges that this pain will cause. So the first challenge, is to avoid to do that manually, because almost of the time, and I think the majority of our customers think it will be easier to mask dynamically or to mask the data, because they know their data and they think with maybe an easy script, it will be very easy to do that. But it's not the case. It's not like a pen on your paper. So you have to consider to maintain your script. You have to your script has to evaluate in the time regarding the schema architecture or even your application, and obviously during all the data life cycle. And if you do that manually, you have to consider the impact on the production. Be sure you don't generate a lot of overhead due to a trigger, because maybe you will create a trigger or you will create a batch or something like that. So you need a minimal impact on your activity. And of course, you have to do that on the fly in real time. So it's not so easy, and almost of our competitor can provide. We can think it's maybe a good solution, but it's not, because they will provide an engine between your database and your client. And when you do that, you create a new attack surface, and the hacker will think it will be more relevant to access directly to your database when they want to access to your sensitive data. So take care about that, and the right solution regarding all of that is to redact your data. So to use the dynamic data masking. Why you would like to redact your sensitive data? Of course, the first thing that you have in mind is to reduce the exposure. So I mean, of course, it could be accidental, it could be voluntary. So you have to control the exposure of your data. The second one is due to the regulation. As I mentioned earlier, you have more and more regulation. For example, PCI DSS, but you have many more other. And they recommend, and sometimes they just not recommend. You must apply the redaction. When you have to consider to redact your data, if you have in your environment, if you have users who are not authorized to use some sensitive data, you have to redact them during the display process. If this sensitive data must stay in the database at all the time, you have to redact your data. So again, if you are using a heterogeneous engine, you have to deploy an agent. You have to install a binary or something like that outside of your from your database. So in that case, your data, even on the same server, will leave your database. And this is critical because your sensitive data will transit, even on a bus, they will transit outside the database. So this is very, very dangerous if you consider that. And of course, if you want to create something with no invasive changes to your app or to your DB, you have to redact. And for sure, if you want to minimize the cost, I mean, if you don't want to apply a lot of application changes, you have to redact. Who will need to redact? So it's quite simple. I think it's almost everyone in your company, because everyone who wants to improve the security will be interested by redaction. It could be the application architect or even the IT guys, but almost of the time they would like to be sure the value displayed on the screen are under control. And how to do it? So this is the concept I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, DDM, the dynamic data masking. So what he will do, he will mask on the fly, so in real time. He will mask your sensitive data. He will apply a masking format on your original value, but only during the display process. So it means you will not modify on your database, you will never modify your original data. It's only on the screen for your client. So what we propose, we have the product called Oracle Data Redaction. Is a part of ASO, so Advanced Security Option. In this product, ASO, you have two features, TDE, this is the encryption, and you have data redaction. The concept is quite easy to understand. You have a sensitive data in your database, and you have an application and different profiles who can access to this sensitive data. But you would like to be sure for each of them, they will access only to the correct value according to their habilitation. So for example, here I will create a policy and I will attach my policy to my sensitive data. And after that, each time I will request this value, this data, I will apply this policy by a process internally, I mean in the database, and I will provide the final result to the client, but according to their habilitation. So in my case, for this profile authorized, he can see all the complete value. But for this one, this redacted profile, he will see only the last 4 digits. And I have no change on my application. I just create a policy on my database side. That's it. So again, this is a declarative data redaction policy. So it means you have to create your own policy for the sensitive data that you want to target and that you want to secure. This is a runtime redaction. So it means on the fly, we will apply a masking format. And we can base this masking format on several conditions based themselves on the multi-factor policy, like the username, the IP addresses, or application system context and other factors. But again, it's very important, you just apply a mask format on your result. So you never touch the database block on disk or even in cache. Like that, you will be sure the unauthorized user cannot see, cannot view the sensitive data. Here, this is the main point. This is a summary for this feature. So it's a real-time redaction. Everything is pre-installed in Oracle DB because this is a part, this is hard-coded, embedded inside the DB. So you don't need to deploy anything. You don't need to patch anything. You don't need to maintain anything. Everything is already installed and already ready to use in the DB. Due to that, because it's already in the code source, in the hard code source of the database, you have a near zero impact on your production. So it means you have no bottleneck generated by the implementation of a policy, or you have no overhead. We will see that it will depend on the algorithm that you will apply, but almost of the time is near zero, but always is, in the worst case, it will be under 3.5% in the worst case. You have no application changes required, so it means you just set your policy on your database side, and that's it. It's functional, operational, instantaneously, and you don't need to modify anything on your application side. You don't need to record or to generate a new release. You have two modes to access and manage to this feature. The first one is from the UI, and the second one is in command line. So everything could be integrated in a batch or in a scheduler if you want. And finally, it's also cloud ready. So it's already pre-installed in the DBCS. So if you are using a cloud database, you can also use the data redaction feature. Now, what we will redact? You have to select your schema because we will focus on the specific object of this schema. We can redact three objects: the tables, the view, and the mView. But take care because only one policy per object can be created. Only one policy per object. After that, inside these objects, you will be able to create a specific mask format for each column inside. So you can consider almost maybe 95% of the common data type in the column, we can redact them. And when you create your policy, it's immediately operational. You don't need to restart, reboot, or reset something. What kind of algorithm we can use? We have 4 algorithms. Here on the slide, you see on the left part the original data, and on your right part, the display value. So if you apply the full algorithm, it means all the character, 100% of the character will be transformed. Partial, you will transform a specific part of your value. You can choose this part based on a specific format. You have also the regular expression. It's quite similar than previous, the partial. You will select the part that you want to modify, that you want to transform, but more accurately and based on a specific format also. And finally, you have the random algorithm, it's like the full, because all the character, 100% of the character will be transformed also, but here you do that, you will do that randomly. Here in this matrix, you see what for each data type, if you can use the full algorithm, the partial regex or random. So as you can see, for the most common data type, the character, the number, and the date time, you can do everything except regular expression, for number and that time. And for the large objects like a blob, club, and CLOB, you can do that, but partially. Now let's have a look on the demo to be more familiar with the concept of this feature. You have two possibilities, again, in command line and with the UI. For my demonstration, I will use the UI, and the UI is the Console Enterprise Manager 13C. So here I got a CDB with two PDB inside, and for this scenario, I will use the PDB2. So I open the interface for PDB2, and to access to the data redaction interface, I will choose security and data redaction. You have to connect with the sysdba user, because you want to control all the metadata. You will create the policy from that. So here you have three tabs. The first one is policy. You can see all the existing policy, and of course you can create your own policy. You have expression, we will see that later, and we have formats. The format is the place where you can find all the predefined, it's like the template, the predefined masking redaction format algorithm. So for example, if I choose this one, IP address, I can see it. I cannot edit it because it's a predefined, but you can also create if you want to create your own based on this predefined format. So I will open a view. You have the name, a quick description, if this is a sensitive column type, and what kind of algorithm you would like to use. And for my example, this is regular expression. So I need to set my pattern, to set the replace string, the position, and the occurrence. So like that, even if you are not comfortable with this kind of syntax, the regular expression, you can also create based on the predefined format. So you have for credit card number, social insurance number, you have also for phone number, IP address, and so on. For sure, maybe you haven't got your own format. So like that, you can create, I will create based on that. And of course, you can also choose the different algorithm, full, partial, regex, random. You have also none. It could be useful, for example, if you are working on the duplication of your database. For example, you did duplicate the production to create a training or a dev test environment, and your data has already been transformed, and you don't want to apply a new redaction format on this value, but you want to keep the policy. So if you choose none, it will be possible to keep the policy, but without applying anything on your original value. So now let's have a look. We will create a quick example To do that, I go back to the policy tab and I click create. Here, I will choose my schema. So in my example, I will choose employee search prod. Okay. And the table I will touch will be user. Of course, you can do that manually if you want to put directly the value here. I will give a name, so HR users, and here I will let here the default expression 1 = 1. So it means this data redaction policy will be applied all the time for all the user, all the connection. I don't want any condition to enable or not this policy. But take care, because it's a true condition. Always you have to be sure your expression is true if you want to activate if you want to apply the masking, the redaction format. So now I will add a specific format, masking format for my column. I will use email, for example, and you will see how to use the predefined value. So here in the redaction format, I will choose email addresses because this is an email. And as you can see, automatically I have the algorithm already set. Okay, I will validate it. And now I will add another one to first name. And here I will use full algorithm. So I don't need to put any parameter because I will replace all the character for this value. Okay, let's do it. I will create it, and automatically is already enabled. So here, this is my policy, and it's enabled. So now let's go back to my SQL developer. Where is this here? Okay, and I will see the impact. So here, this is my original value, and now I will execute my query, and I will see. Okay, it's running. Now I got a mask for the email and a full mask for the first name. If now I disable it, so to do that again, I can do that with a command line, but I will do it from the UI. I disable it. I don't restart anything. I don't touch anything. I will just relaunch, re-execute my query. And as you can see now, I can see the original value. So you see, it's very, very fast and very easy. So now I will enable it again. All right. And now let's have a look on the expression. So by default, I used 1 = 1. Now I would like to modify that. So I already prepared something. Where is my, it's over here. All right. And I will put, for this scenario, I will put this condition. So I would like to use the system context, and I will put the session user. So here, I will put my session user. And what does it mean? It means if my session user is employee search prod, so if I'm connected with this user, I will apply this policy. So we will see that right now. So it's enabled. I will go back to my SQL developer. Here, I'm connected with employee search prod. I will execute my query, and now I got my mask, my redaction. If I go if I go to another one, so here I'm connected with employee search dev. So it's a different user. And if I execute my query, as you can see, I can see the original value. So my condition is correct. If I go back to the condition, I will now modify my condition. I will put different. I don't want here, in my case, if I'm not employee search prod, I will apply this policy. So I will validate it. So let's back to here. And because if I'm not, I will apply. So if I am, I have to see my original value. So let's do it. We will test it. I will execute. And now I can see my original value. You have seen it's very easy like that to control and to be sure the condition that you will use will be correct and relevant regarding according to your concern. So now I would like to show something else. Could be, no, not yet, sorry. I will see here. Another scenario, yes. In this scenario, we will use the expression named. So what is the expression name? If you go back to your policy, so I will cancel it here, and I will use, I will open an existing policy already set, my DR amp. I will edit it. You see here my default expression is 1 equal 1. So it means all the time I will apply this data redaction policy. But now you see in this column, expression name, you see here some values. So what they are, we have to see that. So I cancel it, and now we will open the tab expression. In this tab, you can define your own expression, your generic expression. Like that, it will be very easy for you in the future to use them, to reuse them for many of your policies. So you can use the same expression name for several different data redaction if you want, but you can also use them for a specific column. So in my case, here I create several expression names. So for this one, for example, is IP server. I called it IP server. And here you have the syntax. So it means if I am on the DB server, so here this is my IP address. If I am on the DB server, I will redact the data. Here, if I am the employee search prod user, I will redact. Here for this one, if I am not, if my client is not a JDBC client, I will apply. So you see, different than JDBC client. And again and again and again. Here, if I am the SQL developer module. Like that, it will be easier for me to create a specific redaction policy. So I will edit it again to show you it again. So for example, for all the time, I want to redact the corporate card all the time. But for the email, only if you are using SQL dev. Here, for the first name, only if you are not on a JDBC client. You see, like that, you can be accurate and you can be enable or not the policy according the condition for this column. So now let's have a look in the real world what will happen. So I will here execute this query. So I'm still with employee search prod. And here, as you can see, I have few columns already redacted. Let's go back to my policy. Corporate card is redacted. Email, because I'm on SQL Dev, it has to be redacted, is it? Because first name, because it's not a JDBC client, on my session, again, on my sessions context, here, so the first name is correctly redacted. And one thing more, if I re-execute the query, you see another value. Again, because each time we execute the query, we will apply the format. So that's why you cannot see the same value at each execution. If I now using okay, the application, so I will connect to my app. All right, so okay, I will connect to my app and I will search employees. Okay. And I want to see if there is an impact on my application. So let's choose this one, Carter Jonathan. So if I go back on my SQL developer, I see Carter, but not Jonathan. Jonathan is redacted on SQL developer, but on my app, this is the original value. Why? Again, because if I go back to my policy, again, first name, it's only for not JDBC client. And my HR, regarding the system context, this is a JDBC client, and a SQL developer is not. But you see, my corporate card is already redacted, because again, in my policy, I wanted to do that for all the use cases, all the conditions, no condition, with no condition. I can see also that for SSN, for example, so SSN here is redacted on SQL Developer because it's not a JDBC client, but on my HR, if I go to SSN, where is my SSN? My SSN is here. Yes, it's here. You see, it's not redacted. Same thing for the email. You see, the email here is not redacted on my HR app, but it's redacted on my SQL developer. And if I go back to my definition, the email was redacted only for SQL developer. You see, it's quite easy to understand. Now, I would like to show you the same thing, but for the IP address. So start date, if you see that, start date here is redacted because I'm not on the IP address. For my app, because on my app I am on my IP address server, normally it's not redacted. So that start date, sorry, I don't see my start date. Where is my start date? It's over here. Yes, start date is not redacted because my app is on my server side. So let's go back to my server. I will connect here to my employee search prod. You see, I will configure here quickly the value. Otherwise, it will be too complicated to follow. I just want to be sure I have the right IP address. Okay, so I'm on the server. This is my server. So now, if I execute my query, I should see my start date with the original value, and that is the case. So you see, it's very, very easy and very accurate to do that. And finally, I would like to show you something special. If you are connecting with the sys or system user, and if you execute the same query, you will see, because even if I am on SQL Developer, you see, with employee search prod, everything is redacted, but with sysdba, nothing is redacted. Why? Because with the sys and system user, you have a specific privilege called exempt redaction policy. If I search the same privilege on employee search prod, I haven't got it. So take care, because the DBA or all the user who have the exempt redaction policy will bypass the data redaction policy. So please take care. If you want to work around that, you have to combine data redaction with DB Vault, database vault. And like that, you will be sure even the sys and system will be under control. So now, for my last scenario, I would like to show you how to combine data redaction with label security. So to do that, it's essential to understand the scenario. Imagine you have a sensitive data that you would like to secure. Here, this is my table CRM customer in my app CRM schema. And you would like to secure 3 columns: email, address, and SSN. But you would like to do that according to the habilitation of the population who will connect to the database. So with label security, you can tag each rows, each values, you can tag them with a specific habilitation, a specific level of habilitation. So here, I did create 4 levels from the lowest to the highest. And here I got the label. And for the label, I know none of them will be accessed with this level, and all of them will be accessed with the highest level. And between them, I would like to filter few value according to the habilitation. And I will create a specific data redaction policy just to be sure for my level, I will mask correctly the column, the sensitive column. I will show you how to do that. At the end, you will have this kind of effect. So for the lowest authorization, you cannot have access on the sensitive data. You have nothing, no access. For the second one, the medium, level 20, you will have access only on the rows labelized anonymized. And for these rows, you will redact them for the column email and SSN. Why? Because here I will, for email, I will lower than the highest. For the user app forget, here we can see only the rows labelized forget, and I will redact here the email and address. Why again? Because email is always lower than the highest, but why address? Because it's higher or equal than forget. And finally, the highest authorization, highest habilitation, will have access to all rows, but I want to redact only the address for him. So here, you see my data redaction will be activated because I want redact the higher than forget. Is it higher than him? So that's why I will redact that. Now, if you want to see the result, let's go back to my SQL dev. Now I will use here my PDB1 for this scenario. And if I execute with sysdba, so again, I will bypass my data redaction policy. And the number of rows, so all rows is 389. I will show you now the policy here on my my PDB1 here. So I need to reconnect. Right, here it is. So PDB1 in my scenario. I will open here scenario, security data redaction. And I want to see here for CRM DR, I want to see the policy. So as you can see, I have specific expression, my higher forget, lower and constant, and lower forget. Again, it's the same than here, okay? And if I open, I will show you here the expression name. So I will open the expression tab and I will see the algorithm. You will see here, I will use the OLS demo GDPR label, the label security policy, and I will use the tag forget. So that's exactly what I will have to do if I want to combine data masking with label security. I will attach my data redaction policy to my label security policy. So like that, I will see the effect. So again, if I'm using sys, I will bypass them. So I will see all the original value. If I will use the lowest, so again, normally I cannot see anything. So I will see that. Okay, I'm connected with the lowest habilitation. Now, if I'm connect with app BI, so again, app BI is here. So I will have access on the anon rows, and I will redact email and SSN. So we will see that. I will execute the value, the query, email, and SSN, and I have address. Now, if I switch to another user, app forget. So again, app forget will have access to the forget rows, but we will redact email and address. So let's have a look. Okay, so I will have access on that. Only the 15 rows with the label forget, and here email and address. And now the last one, I will access to all rows because I am the highest user. And here I will just redact the address, but I can see the email and the SSN. And again, I can have access to all rows, but I will redact the address. So you see, it's quite easy to combine data redaction with label security to create a very accurate and dedicated architecture for your sensitive data. So now, when you want to redact, as you have seen, it's important to consider that the dynamic data redaction is exclusively useful for your read-only data, because you will just display a new value with a mask format. So it's very, very useful for the dashboard, for example, or for the reporting. You can also use that for the active pages, but in that case, take care about your form, because if your form can post redacted data, it could be dangerous for your database because it will replace your original data. So take care about that. And finally, it's not the good tool if you have a lot of users with the possibility who can bypass the data redaction policy. Again, for example, the DBA can bypass because they have the exempt redaction policy privilege. So if you have too many users who can have access to your data with this privilege, okay, don't use data redaction. Prefer to use database vault. But you can also combine both. And finally, you have a specific attack called inference attack. This attack could be also dangerous because if you have access, if you have a lot of users who can write exhaustive and ad hoc SQL to access the redacted data, they can be searched, they can be re-execute several times the subquery or the union query or the non-merge queries to finally find the official data by inference. So take care about that also. And again, it's not an alternative to Oracle VPD. VPD is a specific feature. If you want to use data redaction instead of VPD, it's not a good approach. Prefer to combine both of them. I would like to focus on the important things to know. At the end of this presentation, you have to be sure you understand you need a specific privilege to execute DBMS redact. That's why in my scenario, I used sys user. But if you are implementing the execute privilege on the DBMS redact package, you can, of course, execute data redaction. Take care because the policy expression evaluate to true only. Again, to true only. There is no effect on virtual private data policy, so that's why you can combine them. And you can also use data redaction with, you can also use it with multi-tenant, database vault, label security, as you have seen, data pump, but also data masking and subsetting pack. It's a good idea to have a combination of all of them. This slide, you will see all the benefits, but I have already mentioned all of them, but just be aware about the cloud part. It's already included by default with high performance, extreme performance, and Exadata service. Thank you for listening, and now we can switch to the Q&A session.
We look forward to seeing you next month. Our topic next month is Audit Vault and Database Firewall 20. We'll be walking through the new release, showing you some of the new UI and the new features of it, and we're really looking forward to that.